Genesis chapter 4, verse 9. In the prior verse, we saw how Cain had invited Abel out into the field, and there he murdered him, and now we're going to see God's response. Ke apen ha theos pros Cain. Pu estin Habel ha adelphasu. Ha de apen u gnosko. Me phulax tu adelphu mu e mi ego. You'll notice it ends with a question mark there. Well, the syntax in this sentence is actually quite straightforward with one exception that we'll get into. Let's start with the first verb, which of course is apen. That is lego in the aorist form. The subject here is the theos, so now God is addressing someone. He speaks, and he speaks, of course, to Cain. We'll find out in the next verse that actually Abel is speaking in a certain sense, but here God is speaking to Cain. He asks a question, pu, which is where. Notice a question mark at the end. Where is Abel? And then we have yet another reminder of Abel being his brother. We've seen this over and over again in prior verses, stressing the closeness of their relationship and how that has been enormously subverted by Cain. And so he asks him, where's Abel? Of course, God knows. He's trying to elicit a response of Cain, similar to how God asks Adam and Eve in the garden a similar kind of question, even though, of course, he knows the answer. And so now we have Cain's response, but here we have the article standing in. Essentially, it's playing a pronoun role here, so we would translate this as he. It's got a de there, so something like and or but he. Apen, once again, the aorist third singular of lego. So, and he said, u gnosko, I do not know. This is just the standard first singular present active indicative, of course, so I do not know. And then we have a very interesting construction. We start with the may, and you'll see at the end that it is a semicolon or a question mark in Greek. Now, typically, you're going to think may is a negating particle, and in most situations it is, often with the subjunctive or with an imperative or something like that, some sort of non-indicative. But in this particular case, a may plus an indicative, the a me here, particularly with a question, introduces a rhetorical question to which a negative answer is expected. And in fact, this is from Muriaka. He's using this very verse as one of many in the Septuagint that expresses this syntax. You may have learned that before, but have forgotten it. Just a good reminder that may is not always a direct no or negation. In this case, it's asking a question that you're expecting no to be the answer. So what question is Cain asking God? Me phulax, and this means guardian, or perhaps watcher or keeper is kind of the common English translation. And the Hebrew, presumably, that the translator's drawing on here, this is from the Masoretic, is shomer. Presumably that's what the Hebrew was in front of the translator. That also basically means watcher or guardian or keeper, the one who's protecting, something like that. And then he has tu adelphu mu, of my brother, and then ego a me. So if we rearrange all that to reflect this negative particle plus the question mark, the question would be something like, am I, you wouldn't say not, you would actually say, am I my brother's keeper or watcher? Because again, the may here is not actually functioning as a negative. However, when he asked God that, look, am I my brother's keeper? His implied answer that he's expecting from God is no, you're not your brother's keeper. And therefore, Cain's like, why are you asking me where he is? I don't know. That's the kind of charade that he's playing with God. Now, the layered and it's really sad irony of all of this is that as the older brother, he actually should be the keeper or guardian of his younger brother. He, of course, has grossly violated that responsibility by striking him down. So this question with the may on the front end is quite interesting, as he is expecting God to affirm his position, which is, no, you're not your brother's keeper, but in fact, Cain should be as the firstborn. So we'll see what happens in the next verse with respect to God's reply to Cain, but this is verse 9.